This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Matt Frizzell on the show. And he is a director of engineering at Customer.io, and he's got over 20 years of experience as a full stack engineer, which is pretty awesome. And we're going to talk about his journey through leadership and doing that at Customer.io. So anyway, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, John. Good to be here.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to where you are in your career, and what is it that Customer.io does?
Yeah, so how I got here is I think it's fun because I am a non-traditional engineer. Grew up in a household with computers in a time that was maybe a little bit more rare. Went to school with an environmental science and policy degree. Totally different direction than tech. Left college and saw that all the environmental problems were solved, which was good, of course. But tech had always been close to my heart. And I was getting ready to head out to California where all of it was going on. And I'm from Maine, okay, so a small state in the U.S. And I saw a job posting looking for a liberal arts grad to be a tech support and trainer at a software company in Maine, which blew my mind that number one, maybe they were looking for somebody like me and that there was a software company in Maine to start with. So I went in, and it's kind of one of those things where if you can get your foot in the door somewhere, you make of it what you will. So I went to this quirky place with a bunch of individuals, kind of like a ma and pa kind of startup, and did a little bit of everything. Jack of all trades at a small company, system admin, supporting the product, going out week to week across the country to teach our software. And like my engineering story starts by wanting to solve problems and not wanting to kick up the bugs to the developers because I figured I could probably fix this. And so I started down that path until one day I got called up into the founder's office and I thought I was in trouble. And he asked me, "Hey, do you just want to be a developer? Because I know that's what you're doing downstairs." And so I grabbed that. My journey into leadership, actually started at this place that I grew up as an engineer, because a couple of years later, we had kind of this unfortunate kind of handshake deal with a partner vendor that ended up being kind of the inroads to the loss of IP. And what we suffered as a small company was the loss of kind of what we were doing uniquely. And as a result, a kind of a crumbling of our user base. And at that point, the founders said, we've spent some time and sweat in this, but we're done. And if anybody really wants to try to make a go of this, and we knew we had to rebuild the platform because it wasn't scaling and it wasn't stable. We saw that we had to rebuild the customer base because they had kind of left the doors for the promise of greater things. And I was just, maybe naive enough and crazy enough at the time to say, yeah, I'll do that. And so I spent the next 10 years or so running a small company as their technical leader. And again, got to rebuild and re-architect something from the ground up, rebuild a customer base. And after that decade, after a couple possible exits and saying no, we as a group said, let's move on to different things. And when I did that, I felt myself at a crossroads. I was moving to a bigger city. I was moving down to Boston at the time. I was changing what I was professionally. And honestly, after a decade of leading a company, I actually didn't know if I was a good engineer, a good leader. I had no clue. So I had the worst case of imposter syndrome because I'd only done this one job my whole life. So I reset. I reset as a senior software engineer, which was a hard sell because I was coming off a title that was really grand. I had a C in front of it. And walking into places and interviewing and saying, hey, I just want to know if I'm good at this job. I want to know if I'm a good engineer. I got turned away multiple times as a result. But somebody saw something in me. I was able to reestablish as an engineer, quickly became a team lead, director, and again, all the way up to like a vice president of engineering, kind of taking on role after role after role. And that's almost gets us to today, John, believe it or not. A year ago or so, I had such great stability over my career, and I had gotten my second place to where I felt it was time to move on, that I decided to go the opposite route of stability, and I went after a startup. And as some startups do, 2.5 months in, that startup stopped. And I was left thinking, gee, I've given up all the stability I had. I don't know if it worked out because I'm looking for a job again. But I spent all last summer looking for a place that could match what I felt I had in my first job. And we could talk more about that. And that actually led me, after a few months of looking and really being picky, to Customer I/O, which is a place that's kind of uniquely matching kind of how I like to think about our world. What we do here is we offer a customer engagement platform. I'm happy to say, a year ago I would have said a product, but that's not true anymore. We are a platform designed for marketing teams, so that they can reach out to customers delivering messages that they want. Sometimes when you're in the world of delivering messaging, you might worry that you're in the spam game, and that's the complete opposite of what we do here. We believe in messaging that actually matters. So you'll see us. Our suite of products at the moment is made up of Journeys, which is kind of that messaging automation tool, and recently, as of this year, a data pipelines platform that connects the entire tech stack that our marketing customers actually employ. So that's the kind of story of how I got here. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. So let me ask you about that story, because I think a lot of people find themselves in because you look at America, most of our companies are smaller companies, and a lot of people find themselves kind of accelerating into a leadership role in a smaller company and not, and having that imposter syndrome and not knowing whether they can cut it in a larger space, or if they're actually good at what they do, or do they kind of just trick everybody because they could talk really well. And and as a tech leader, I've fallen into those traps before. I remember my last job, I got promoted several times really quickly, and then when I went out to look for a job, or I met with other people, and I kind of felt dumb sometimes when they would talk about something that I wasn't aware of, or was a little bit outside of my lane of ability. And I started thinking, like, am I capable of doing this job that I have the title of now, or not? Do you ever have that feeling, or did you ever have that feeling?
Yeah, I used to have that feeling more. I would say that was a larger, if I had a pie graph of my motivations, I think probably also my fears, that made up a lot more of who I was. And to a degree, I will always carry that with me. But it doesn't own me anymore, right? I know over time what leadership looks like, and I know kind of my strengths and my weaknesses. And I think the thing that you were just talking about, like hitting some piece of the job that you're not really sure what to do, or you're not really sure if you totally understand it. Everybody has that all the time. And I think one of the things that I've always done is I am very honest about what I can do, what I know, and what I don't know. I believe in a place that you can ask the questions that you need answered, and there's no fear. There's no fear of, that classic, like, is this a dumb question? And people say, well, nothing's a dumb question. That's true. It really is. So, I think that's the thing that's always carried me through is asking questions and being honest about myself.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that, like, you said that, when you were, going back from having a C in front of your title down to, trying to just be an engineer again, do you feel like you had maybe lost some of the technical chops that were needed? Because I know a lot of times, as you move into management, you take a step back sometimes in some of the day-to-day processes.
Yeah. Right. So I've actually lived that cycle now, 3 times in my career of going up the chain and I'm maybe a little bit strange in this way, is that I always reset lower because it allows me and affords me a way to learn about about the job and the company. And I feel like we find our path. It's like water finds its path, right? I feel that, like, resetting on your position, that if you grasp that and you master that, then there'll be a place for you down the road. So yes, certainly each time that I've moved up the organizational ladder, you worry about things that you've lost. On the flip side, one of the things I always try to do is I try to remain as close to the people that I lead as possible. I'm not in their day-to-day business, but I certainly want to be able to talk to them and experience what they're feeling. So if I have somebody come to me and says, our build process is terrible, things are taking too long, something's costing so much money, I want to be able to go check out the code, run the thing, and feel the pain. And I think that translates, both to how you manage people, but also when you're a SaaS company, you want to feel the pain of your customers too. So I think looking to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes is something I do all over the place.
No, I think that's really good. And, I try to do the same thing. I know I always try to have what I call Fun Day Friday, which is the day that I'm going to not do any, management work. I'm not going to do any strategy work. I'm going to get into code. I'm going to check out a project. I'm going to, whether it's working with our, networking guys or PC tech guys, whichever department I want to work with that day, I want to get in there and get my hands dirty and try to experience life from their perspective.
Yep.
So I think that's a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, just today we were in a squad meetup on one of my squads, and I have an open front end PR that somebody on the squad graciously volunteered to help close out, and I said, no, I need to see this one all the way through. So yeah, I think that's how you remain not relevant, I wouldn't say, but it allows you to feel things, and it allows your team to know that you're invested in them and what they do. So yeah, I think that's a huge part of at least my philosophy on how to lead. It's I think that's really important too. It's also important, especially with, it may be different because we're in the technology field and stuff, but it's also important to let people know that you are aware of what they do. And, yes.
That, like you said, you feel it. And, I've replaced someone at a job one time where the director of technology that left wasn't technical. He was hired because he knew somebody and he had management experience. They brought him in just to manage the budget, basically, and relay information. That was basically his job.
Yeah.
And then I came in being technical, and the team didn't really expect that. They expected me to be more like the other guy, and I'm like, well, I like to get my hands dirty too. I know what you're talking about. I can get in there too, and I think that's an important aspect.
But it's funny if you allow me. I mean, part of why I try to do this, there's large parts of my career that they're built off the experience that my father had as like an old school mainframe programmer in kind of waterfally corporate America. This is a guy who had a long career as an engineer, who skirted every possible layoff, right sizing that there was because he was such a skilled engineer. After 40 years at the same place, he was still not a senior software engineer in title because he never wanted a promotion. He didn't want to deal with meetings. He didn't want to deal with bureaucracy. He just wanted to do his job and impact the company on a technical level, right? And one of the things, not only hearing about meetings after meetings that weren't productive for him, I also have heard about his perspective on management and how hard he found it to have managers that didn't understand his job. He couldn't bounce ideas off of. And I can tell you that my entire career, I try to make sure that I don't become that thing. I want to be able to, I wish I could work with my dad. I wish that had ever been an opportunity, so that I could have been the manager he would have wanted, I guess is where I go with that.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think we chatted about this a little bit before the show that, you wanted to develop a culture that your dad would love to work in. And I wanted to develop a culture that my kids, will be successful in. I think it's kind of cool. Yep. We have that little thing in common. When it comes to that, I think that what you're saying about your dad's career and seeing that level, that's one of the important aspects that I think is underlooked by a lot of people. They think that, in order to be successful, they have to climb the corporate ladder and make this progress up. But one of the most important people on a team is what I call the rock. And that's the person that's always there, that's steady, that will be dependable, and you can always count on them. They're not looking for the promotion. They're not looking for the extra. They're looking for, I'm going to do what I'm said I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I probably would even take that a couple of steps further on what I see on a team, so you're absolutely right. That person who knows that what they get the most joy out of is the technical aspect. It is somebody as a central figure to an engineering team. In the same way that your connection to product, driving ideas and industry information, I mean, core and central, but above and beyond, when I look at and I form and I augment teams, what I find the most success with is a variety of individuals. I have seen teams where the variance in skill level drives a team to greater things more than if I put a group of your alpha coders all together and said, go tackle this task, because they each, when people are different and think different, they pull each other forward in directions that you wouldn't expect. And so across the board, especially when I think about teams and team structure, it's all about this balance, this constant pulling each other forward, pulling each other up, and not just technically. Sometimes it's how we talk to each other. It's understanding what each person's role is. It's understanding who you turn to when there's a stalemate on a decision, and then being able to move that forward. Yeah, I mean, the rock at the center, but everything, is just all about balance for me on a really successful team.
Yeah, I think one of the things I feel like you're kind of dancing around here is a little bit about diversity on the team and having that different concepts. And I remember I go back to a time when I was the manager of a web and mobile development team, and that team was the most diverse team, not just being by race, but by age, by experience level, by hobbies that people had, by religion. Just very, very diverse team in every aspect, and that made some of the best products that I've ever been a part of. and partly because people would have, one of our QA folks was an older lady, and she would look at things in a way that it should say, I know this isn't my place, but your user interface would be better if it was like this. And this is, for me. And she would explain things in a way that, normally, from my experience, if I had a younger QA person, they would just kind of test what they're supposed to test and move on. But she would go that extra mile and say, to put her 2 cents in there. And people loved it. They listened to it and reacted to it. It made our products just so much better. So I think having that little bit of diversity in all areas, whether it be experience, race, religion, whatever, is important to developing those great projects.
Oh, it is so critical. I don't think there's anything more valuable. And like I said, I would rather a team of varied skill sets, of varied life experiences, than a team of those classically trained engineers that just code. And it's not that you don't need them. You rely on them as well. But diversity and balance. There's nothing better. And honestly, the growth of those teams are the things that give you the biggest goosebumps, because their growth is not just a technical delivery. It is growth in all aspects of what a team can be. I had an engineer, I think it was a month ago in a 101, who said about their squad, I've grown up, I've heard about teams, and I've heard about how they matter in like sports and when I do group projects. And they said, but I didn't really understand what that meant until now. And this is a team that has undergone transformation in the last year about how we work together, what our processes are, like just how we put trust in each other. And so it was one of those moments as a manager that you live for, where somebody says, I know what a team is, and it's this. That's a pat yourself on the back moment. And I hope you've had some of those recently, because that put so much wind in my sails. I was over the moon.
Yeah, I bet. So tell me a little bit about that. You kind of sound like you're saying something like teamwork as a culture, and you developed a culture of teamwork that maybe this individual had never experienced before. How is it that you go about with your team building that teamwork culture?
Yeah. So I think I have always, we talked a little bit about it before, in that for me, one of the biggest factors is honesty and openness. So I try to model the behavior of, I don't know everything. I know some things, but I don't know others. I think that's part of it. I think also important, in terms of how I build a team, is like giving people the ability to hear each other. And that might sound simple. You can hear me clearly. My mic is working. But to know who I am and what I'm about and what I'm trying to convey to you, there is a skill there that we're just not born with. And this comes down to especially that diversity on a team, understanding where your team is coming from, understanding how they communicate, how they think. I mean, sometimes it's as simple as, hey, before we get into a group call, if we want to talk about a deep technical issue, we know on our squad today that some of our members need a write-up, even if it's just a brief proposal, something that allows them to read, digest, and then come mentally prepared to a conversation. So sometimes it's just knowing how to talk to each other. I also believe, and I deal with this on an individual basis, but it spreads to a squad and a team. I believe in happiness. I believe that if we are happy in what we do every day for work, then work doesn't become a dirty word. Like work is the thing that on Sunday night, you're excited for Monday morning, versus the engineer that at the end of the week is like, Friday can't come quick enough. I want a team of people that go and live their life, but Sunday night, they're excited for Monday morning because they know that they're going to have fun at work and they're going to contribute to something that matters. So I think a lot of that is what I focus on. Empathy, kind of thinking about each other and staying happy in what we do.
Yeah, I think happiness is one of those under talked about aspects, because I think it's obvious, if you're happy at work, you're going to be more productive and you're going to be better.
Yeah.
And companies try to, invoke happiness by, giving people, engagement events and things like that, and having a food truck or whatever. And that works for a little bit, but that's more like short-term happiness. And I think getting back into what you were saying is feeling like you're heard by your team, and whether they are going to do what you say is one thing, but the fact that they actually hear you and they empathize with you, make you feel like you matter and what you're working on matters, is one of those things that goes way further than having pizza brought in.
Yeah. and like you said, those things are temporary, and what motivates everybody is different. And I've had a conversation with a lot of engineers on motivation, especially when it comes to things, when we get right down to the core of it, sometimes promotions and compensation. And I do believe that if those are the things that you chase, if you're looking for notoriety and fame and fortune, you might never be filled up. If that is your sole motivation, you might never feel like you got there. It's okay. It's okay to strive for those things. And I think those are excellent goals. But if that's all that fills you up at the end of the day, every time you get a promotion, every time you get a pay bump, you're going to look for the next thing. And so I think you need to find motivation elsewhere. And I think that's where, for me, happiness comes in. I think feeling like at the end of your day, you did something that made maybe somebody else's world better, even if it's just your own. I think that is the type of motivation that it puts you on this endless feedback loop that you get some of it, and instead of feeling empty at the end, you want more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I totally get that. I do want to switch gears just a little bit. And, one more thing that you kind of touched on, and you mentioned that during a one-on-one, someone said something to you. And one-on-ones is one of the things I'll talk about with a lot of tech leaders to figure out I'm still trying to figure out how to make my one-on-ones better and how to have the best one-on-ones you could have. Tell me a little bit about how you do that with your team, and if you have a certain pattern or certain strategy for them, or what advice would you have to a new manager that's just getting into doing one-on-ones?
Yeah. The hardest thing, which is don't talk all the time. I think a lot of times as a leader, especially as a new leader, you have it's easy to slip into thinking, I need to be telling this person, how they can improve, what I'm seeing, and really directing them. And I don't believe that about my one-on-ones. My one-on-ones are not time for me. It's time for them. And so fundamentally, every person I work with knows that time is theirs to use it as they would like. That doesn't mean I won't come with something if there's time for us to discuss openly, but certainly always the first step is that person feeling comfortable that they own that time and can talk about whatever they want. Sometimes it's work related. Sometimes it's growth related. Sometimes it's, when I talk about weather or sports or parenting, all that stuff is on the table. Because I find all those things valuable in not just relationship building, trust building, but also you end up hearing in the stories that people tell and the things that they bring to the table. You hear as a leader the ways that they want to improve and maybe they don't see it yet, or things that they're seeing that they think they could make better at work if somebody would just listen to them. If you fill that airtime and you don't give them space to breathe, you'll never learn anything. And so for me, one-on-ones are giving space to that person and letting them know it's their time.
Yeah, I think that's really good about giving them space and not talking. That's one of the traps that I fell into as an early leader. I felt like, and part of it was my own insecurity. I felt like I needed to be directing and leading the conversation to I don't know why, but I guess it gets back to insecurity. But now what I've realized is that, letting someone else talk through their struggles or whatever they're thinking about at the time, like you said, whether it's work, whether it's, they're dealing with something at home that they just want to get off their chest, letting them talk through it. A lot of times they will come up with their own solutions to problems that are way better than what you would give them if you just tried to direct them. It's just get out of their way sometimes.
Yeah. And I mean, I even, we've recently gone through, one of these, half-year review cycles, right? And I had one of my reports say, I am feeling so good because for the first time, I am making my own goals. I know what I am doing well, and I can see where I want to grow, and I see how that could help the squad. And I'm setting goals. Like I'm not beholden to something that somebody else thinks I should do. And that is so empowering when you have that space to figure out what it might be that you want to do, and the room to let it happen. I've been super lucky in the places I've worked to be able to grow into places that existed to fill the gaps. And I have found so much value in that like creating that space, not just in one-on-ones, but in our day-to-day work for people to fill it in. I think that's an important part of what we can do as leaders. Not get in the way is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And whenever I talk to people that had, bosses that micromanage and feel like that, they always have to be, they want their team to be order takers versus, team players and participants. One of the things that I always say to people that are in that situation, if I get a chance to talk to the leader, is to tell them that, look, your approach doesn't scale. If you want to build a team that is successful, then you can't be in the middle of everything, and you can't be directing everything, and you can't be the one always talking because you don't scale. You need a team that can move outside of you. Yep.
You hit on what I think my job is. I think that my job is to make myself redundant. I believe that if I'm doing a good job at what I do, you don't need me anymore. And that sounds, if I had verbalized that 10 years ago, I would have felt a little bit scared. But I'm not. I know that if I can feel good about walking away from a team, that means I have done my job, that they know what works for them, and that they don't need me like guiding them at all. That is the biggest sign of my success is if they don't need me anymore.
Yep, 100%. Like next year, I'm taking the leap and doing a 2-week vacation. I've never done a 2-week vacation where I'm just going to leave the country for 2 weeks and not be connected. But I know my team can handle it. And it's one of the things, like you said, when you've done your job, they can live without you.
That's right. There is no greater feeling. And I would say, delete whatever your messaging tool is. Don't bring your computer. Don't fall into any of this trap. Just leave it all at home. They will survive. Survive.
I'm planning on putting my out of office message to be like, I'm going to be gone from this date to this date. If you sent me a message and received this, then send me another message after this date, because I'm going to be deleting all emails that came in between those two time periods. Because I do not plan on responding to anybody.
Yep. Perfect.
Wait till I get back. Matt, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate having you on. If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little about how they can connect with you, learn more about what you're doing at customer.io, and just connect with you.
Yeah, so you're free to find me on LinkedIn. I always open to chat and help and direct. I work with some nonprofits on trying to help young engineers kind of find their place in the world, and so I'm certainly happy to help there. And if people want to know more about Customer.io, certainly you could look at us on LinkedIn, but you can check out our website. It's just customer.io, believe it or not, on the web. Lot of fun things happening at our company, a lot of growth. And I'm really privileged to work at a place that counts itself among a short list of the best places to work on really nice lists in the world, and some of the fastest growing companies out there. And so, I would say come check us out. There's a lot going on in my world.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll link that up in the show notes too at geekleader.com so people can click through there. Again, Matt, love the conversation. Thanks for coming on the show.
John, I really appreciate it. Good to talk.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to, click on their links, and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.